Welcome to On the Record, Updates and Echoes, a podcast by the Pocahontas Record-Democrat. We're sponsored this month by the Pocahontas Chamber of Commerce. Pocahontas City Administrator Laura Holmes ended her time with the city last week. The City Council, in a special meeting June 4th, hired a consultant to serve as the city's interim administrator while city officials decide how they're going to fill the open clerk and administrator roles. The council had an interesting meeting earlier in the week as well. You can read both of those stories in this week's paper. Iowa's primary election was last week. Pocahontas County didn't have any contested local elections. The fall election should be interesting, though, with contested races all the way up the ticket for state and federal races. You can read a little bit about those races and how statewide candidates did in Pocahontas County in this week's paper. Retired PAC art teacher Bill Strack was named the 2026 Heritage Days Parade Grand Marshal. He had some lovely things to say about Pocahontas, a city he's called home for more than 40 years. That story is in this week's paper. And don't forget that Heritage Days is next week already. We'll have a full schedule in next week's paper. Last week really was a week full of meetings in Laurens. The city council talked about a possible downtown sidewalk project. They brought up the fact that they're a little bit uneven. They're starting to rise. And there's also some areas that need some improvements. That story is in this week's Laurens Sun. In Newell, the city council talked about the need to demolish the old pool, which hasn't been open for a few years, and whether a splash pad or pond would be a more appropriate project for the city's pool committee to be working on. That story, as well as coverage of the Fonda City Council with information about some new rules at the Fonda pool, are both in this week's BV County Journal. You can also read about grants that 2 Newell-Fonda special ed teachers received recently in this week's journal. In sports, the PAC baseball team won 4 straight games last week out on the diamond. They were supposed to kick off this week at East Sac County on Monday, then play 2 games at the Iowa Central Community College Invite in Fort Dodge. They'll wrap up the week at Newell-Fonda June 12th. The PAC softball team was 2-3 with wins over GTRA and Alta Aurelia, and losses to Sioux Central, Newell-Fonda, and Algona. They were set to play Monday night at East Sac County, Storm Lake, June 9th. They are to have 2 games, June 12th in Lawton, and they'll play at Mobile for the Woodbury Central Tournament, June 13th. The Newell-Fonda softball team had a 4-1 week last week to improve its record to 8-2 overall. They beat PAC, Manson Northwest Webster, West Bend Mallard, and North Union, and dropped a game to Hinton. They were set to host Emmitsburg on Monday, host ELC on June 9th, and be at Alta Aurelia June 10th, wrapping up the week at Battle Creek June 12th and 13th for the OA BCIG tournament. The Mustangs baseball team picked up 2 wins over Manson Northwest Webster and West Bend Mallard, while they lost 3 additional games last week. This week, they host Emmitsburg on June 8th, play at Carroll June 9th, at Alta Aurelia June 10th, and they host PAC on June 12th. Thanks again to our June sponsor, the Pocahontas Chamber of Commerce. And up next is the Echoes portion of the show.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
Welcome to the Echoes portion of the podcast. I'm Erin Summers. With me is Sandy Rutherford. This week, we are turning to the Pocahontas County Sun, which again was the precursor to the Laurens Sun. And I just opened up April 1905. I can't remember actually when I pulled these particular pages out, if there was something specifically I was looking for and I came across it, or just sometimes I do just pick dates and start clicking and see what's on the front page. And this was not a front page story, so it was probably something else I was looking for. And then this headline caught my attention. It says, "Off for Canada." And the story reads, "The Burritt-Allen breaking outfit left at 2:00 last Monday morning for Hanley, Assiniboia, Canada, over the Northwestern." That's the railroad. It consisted of 5 cars loaded with 26 horses, a lot of breaking plows, and other farm utensils, a large quantity of baled hay, grain, and provisions, and a portable house for the eating and sleeping quarters of the crew. So obviously, I don't know all the towns and parts. I know province names, but I had to look up Assiniboia, which I apologize if that is not how you say it, but
yeah,
that is beyond my skill set.
That'd be my guess.
It was a provincial district, provincial, I may have had a typo there, district in what's now Saskatchewan. Hanley is a city that still exists. It's about 1,000 miles northwest of Laurens. The population today is 540 people. So,
Oh.
I mean, it would fit right in Pocahontas County.
Yeah.
So, going on from the article, the personnel of the expedition consists of Burritt S. Allen, John Severy, C.W. Patton, W.P. Bolin, Harry Bolin, and G.D. Savage. A better lot of boys never left any community. This expedition has been under consideration by the Allens, who have extensive land interests near Hanley, for several months, and nothing has been left undone to ensure its success and provide for the comfort of men and animals. The breaking plows and portable house were made at Kreul, Kreul, Brothers Shop here, the plows being of a special pattern invented by Fred Kreul. John Severy will be foreman of the breaking crew, while Burritt Allen will establish a land office in the town of Hanley. We had hoped to obtain a picture of the outfit before it left, but in the hurry attending their departure, the matter was forgotten until after the car had been taken to pieces for shipment. If it is possible, a picture will be taken after they have everything ready for business in the far north, and we will present it to our readers. And so, like, I'm reading this, I'm like, what? Where are they going? Why are they going?
Yeah.
But like 1905. So I did some more reading, and I'll have some more here in a minute. But apparently, in the early 1900s, there were a lot of settlers who thought, even Western Iowa was too settled. There was, land prices were probably going up. A lot of the land had been homesteaded and purchased and sold, and relative to income, I think prices were going up. So people started looking north, which, when you think about it, like, it's going to be shorter growing seasons, the weather's going to be even more intensely cold in the winter. Did not deter them, though.
No.
I didn't realize how many Iowa settlers headed even farther north in the early 1900s. The Sun had more information a few weeks later, and I do not think this is original reporting by the Sun editor necessarily, but they reran a lot of stories. So, headline, another record in land hunting. This spring's exodus to Canada greater than ever. It was thought in 1903, when over 45,000 people went from the United States to Canada, that the limit of yearly immigration to the wheat zone of the continent had been reached. But when, in 1904, about as large a number of American citizens signified their intention of becoming settlers of Canadian lands, the general public prepared for the announcement of large numbers in 1905. It goes on to predict that about 50,000 people would emigrate to Canada that spring. There were special trains going from Chicago, Omaha, St. Paul, and Detroit for people to join their family and friends who'd already gone ahead of them. Which, I mean, once I thought about it, it made sense.
Yeah.
So then, quoting from the paper, this other article.
I mean, especially with those states being more northern areas.
You're used to the weather,
yeah.
and
it's going to be a little different, but.
And you think, too, like Chicago, Omaha, St. Paul, Detroit, those are all crowded.
Yes.
And how dirty they were still in the early 1900s. It was smoky and stinky. Sewers are just being, like, dug.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was like a hard life out on the prairie, but, like, at least it's clean.
Right. And it was your own.
Exactly. So this year, much new territory has been opened up by the railroads, which are extending their main lines and throwing out branches in their push across the best grain and grazing lands on the continent. This new territory has attractions for those desiring to homestead on the 160 acres granted each settler by the Canadian government. Many also take advantage of the opportunity to purchase lands at the low figures at which they are now being offered. It does not require much thought to convince one that if Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, and other lands with a value of $50 to $100 something an acre will give a good living by producing 10 to 13 bushels of wheat to the acre and 30 to 50 bushels of corn to the acre, the lands of Western Canada at $7 to $10 an acre, producing from 20 to 30 bushels of a superior wheat to the acre, should produce a competence to the ordinary farmer in a few years. I don't know.
Okay.
So that was kind of the research that the information that I found. I have a little bit more to come back to, but what you said had done some research too. What did you find? I'm curious.
Well, I just was kind of curious, like, when people were leaving, why they were leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found basically was there was a book that was Forging Our Legacy by Valerie Knowles, and she had some different research into it. and they had the Department of Interior expanded a network of American offices and agents, and they actually, Canadians had a campaign
Really?
to recruit American farmers.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it was under, what was his name, Clifford Sifton.
Okay.
But yeah, they said because they were familiar with the demanding way of life in North America, and many of them were also experienced prairie farmers, most of these American homesteaders adapted well to the conditions on the prairies. Those who came with capital, machinery, and livestock, and many did, successfully settled into life in their new surroundings even more quickly. And that's why most Americans were considered to be the most desirable of immigrants.
Huh. That's really cool.
So, yeah.
I
It says Americans were the largest group of immigrant settlers in the province of Saskatchewan and Alberta when they were created in 1905.
huh.
And I also read someplace that they were getting a lot more for wheat up there than they were.
Well, that's yeah. They mentioned that here. I mean, it was. Let's see. This says. It doesn't say how much. 10 to 13 bushels of wheat. Yeah, but anyway, it doesn't say how much they were getting, but they were getting 10 or 2 to 3 times as much wheat. And then I guess I didn't have the price, but they were getting 2 or 3 times more wheat and getting a better price. Like
Yeah.
that, if you're already dealing with Iowa weather, I mean, it's going to be
Right?
similar. I think it's really interesting too. I in my column it would be last week's newspaper by the time you hear this. Or no, it was this week's newspaper. I get confused with timelines. My column in the June 10th newspaper is about a book I just read about the children's blizzard of 18, I think it was 88 or 89. But it followed a lot of immigrant stories from like Norway and Germany and how they got here and how ill prepared they were for just how harsh the winters were. And I know this from college, European winters are much more mild than Midwestern winters. So
you hear about that a lot, the difference in climate.
So that was that. I just want to follow up here really quickly. Those Laurens men who headed north did not stay very long. Did you see that article
I did see that article, it didn't say why. Did it?
Not exactly. It says.
Am I just forgetting that it?
It was very vague, and it ran just probably 2 or 3 weeks after that initial article, so they were not there for very long. It says Guy D. Savage, who went to Canada some time ago, but I think it was like 2 weeks ago, with the Allen breaking outfit, returned this morning. There was an evident misapprehension on the part of the Allens as to the conditions in Western Canada. They have sold their stock and machinery, and for the present, at least, the members of the expedition have shaken the dust of King Edward's dominions from their shoes. So then they were selling off their stuff. It ends with the Boland brothers, John Severy and Charles Patton, are contemplating going to the Pacific coast. So, of course, I searched all of their names a little bit more. John Severy, I think, had a son named Glenn, who did end up living and then dying and being buried in Santa Monica, California. So I don't know that he immediately ended up out west, but he did eventually settle out west, and John was buried in California as well, probably. Guy Savage came back to Iowa. He worked as a printer for the Marathon Republic, a newspaper in Marathon.
Yeah.
Burritt Allen went to the University of Iowa Law School and ended up practicing law in California. He left Iowa and did go west. W.P. Boland farmed around Laurens and then retired into town in his later years. And Harry Boland, I assume is his brother, most likely ended up in Montana. When W.P. Boland died in 1957, his obituary said that Harry preceded him in death, and then further newspapers only had a mention of a wife, Mrs. Harry Boland, coming to visit Iowa in 1960 from Eureka, Montana. So they did not stay in Laurens, most of them. They just
had the itch to go.
They had the itch to go and ended up some interesting places. But, I always sort of laugh because the times in college that I went to Europe, and the Europeans all laugh at Americans and they're like, why do you want to see everything? And, we're descended from the people who couldn't sit still and got the heck out of Europe and then forged across a whole continent and just like beat it into submission.
Yeah.
It's just kind of what we do.
We're just curious. We gotta keep going.
So that is how I learned about this great Canadian immigration from the Laurens Sun.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Me either. I thought it was really interesting. So, and it'd be interesting to see like what connections there still are, like family members that kept in touch over how
Right.
long they did. So
Yeah.
if you're a random Canadian listener, do we have any Canadian listeners? And if you have ties to Laurens or Pocahontas, I would love to hear from you. I feel like that's very unlikely, but it'd be
It's worth
kind of
a shot.
cool.
It's worth a shot.
So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.